What is consciousness? More than that, what is human consciousness? And how can we get beyond that and see more of the consciousness, the raised consciousness that will help us see beyond the veil? And what do we mean by all this when we're just talking about human consciousness? Well, Rob and I have this analogy for you that's likened to, let's say, if we're all living in a goldfish bowl, those of us living on planet Earth as humans, which obviously most of us reading and watching and listening to this podcast at the moment, it involves most of us. So, what's the analogy of this goldfish bowl? So, you know those over luckily I don't think any has ever been it's been put to this this strugglement at this moment of having to live anymore in a goldfish bowl. But yeah, in the 70s when we were younger, we didn't know any difference about animals. We had a goldfish and it just swam round and round and round in a circle in a wheel continually, nowhere else to go in this goldfish bowl. And it didn't know anything else. It didn't know it could come out of the goldfish bowl. Now, of course, some of you will say, well, it could come out of the goldfish bowl and it would die. But what if it came out of the goldfish bowl into a huge tank of more and more knowledge and information? And that is what we're talking about today. What we feel is many of us as humans, if we've not, let's call it awakened, if we've not um, activated our knowledge and been aware that there's more out there than just what's on planet Earth in terms of how we are living, in terms of the three-dimensional aspects of ourselves. If we just live in this three-dimensional aspect, all we know is we talk about things like karma and how we are living on earth, struggling, how we are living on earth in scarcity. But actually, is that true? Is that really true? And so Rob and I will always talk about karma as being this, it's a false overlay. It's been put in place to, let's say, make humans think, as a mind control, humans think that those are the lessons we've got to learn. Now, to a certain extent, that is the truth. We have to learn that those lessons in terms of seeing the darkness or seeing the duality in order to come away. But really, those lessons are not for us to sit in that goldfish bowl, going round in a circle, the same patterns over and over again, the same patterns that our family have done, our ancestors have done. Now is the time to understand there is more to the goldfish bowl in terms of consciousness. And this is how we want to start it. When we start with consciousness, as in awareness, if you like, when we start to move through what we've forgotten. So, Rob and I now want to talk about moving through the veil and understand what is beyond the veil and go into more of our multidimensional consciousness, which just means it's beyond the human aspect at this moment in time. Just think of it as having more than a human, three-dimensional, what you see is what you get kind of consciousness to, wow, there is just so much more than what you see type of consciousness. What do you think on that note, Rob?
Oh, let's take the goldfish
Yeah.
analogy and let's assume, as I think is correct, that living a life in which you have not turned on your consciousness
Mm,
is
mm,
a life of resignation.
mm.
So the goldfish swims round and round and round, and neither you or I know what the goldfish is thinking. We
No.
guess it has some kind of basic thought,
Mm,
but it's going round and round. And what if it is thinking, is this all it is?
mm,
What if the goldfish were able to look at the edge of that goldfish bowl and just push through it? What if that glass goldfish bowl is the veil that the goldfish wants to see through?
mm.
And if, in this fantastic analogy we're creating, that goldfish could dissolve through the wall of its bowl and find a whole new level of consciousness beyond, we as humans have that ability.
Yes. Every one of us.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. We're born with this ability. It is our birthright, and we often ignore that birthright, or we don't quite connect with it, or nobody helps us get over the fact that it's there and we can find this knowledge. And we have
Mm.
a lot of teaching in society, across all societies, I think,
Mm.
Julie, that indicate that that knowledge is not a good thing, that we
Yes,
shouldn't have it.
absolutely. Mm.
Fundamental principles. Pandora opened a box and released all the troubles onto the world. All Pandora did was exposed the truth.
Yes. Too
And
much
of
for
course,
people. It's too much.
absolutely. So you expose that truth, and what happens? Other people say, put that lid back on because we don't want you to know that.
Yeah, I
We
want to
aren't
avoid
ready.
that. Yeah.
Indeed.
Oh, definitely not ready. That's a good one,
No,
Rob.
not
Not
ready.
ready
Not
for
ready.
it. Mm.
Eve ate the apple. Eve was
Mm.
tempted to eat the apple. What was the apple? Just lost my earplug. The apple was quite simply knowledge, the tree of knowledge.
Hmm.
So when Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, she was then, in terms of our teaching, expelled from the Garden of Eden because she
Mm.
knew too much.
Mm.
And Adam, of course, went with her. So humanity knew too much too soon. But we're taught that that was a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think either you and I believe it is.
No,
Yeah.
this is where you're taught within this goldfish bowl that to be in fear of that. How very dare you if you th even think that there is something beyond this goldfish bowl. There's something beyond your 3D thinking, something
Yeah.
beyond what's controlling your mind, your ego, again, all those things that ego will keep us small, will keep us from um, expanding out into that thing that might feel impossible for you. So today it's more like thinking about things in terms of an individual and how you can relate to this in terms of your consciousness. Last week was more about the collective and
Mm.
how we all work together, but this week thinking about it as an individual, because once you start to expand your consciousness, you're able to tell somebody else about, wow, what I've seen.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is about extending. How do we do that? We do all the groundwork, we work within, we have to do the work to move beyond consciousness. The way we're talking, it's felt a little bit like people will think it's something on the outside of us. Once again, it isn't. It isn't something we're trying to reach or seek, as Rob said, and I absolutely agree. Each and every one of us are able to do this, to see beyond the veil, see beyond
Yeah.
consciousness, see beyond, that bit of amnesia that we were born with, where we chose to say, I don't want to know everything. And it's also not to know absolutely all the knowledge, because yes, there's a lot of us, it would just be too much. And this is because there is so much that is when we see things beyond, in the greatest, in a higher consciousness realm, let's say, in our own higher consciousness, we start to see things, and it's things that you cannot describe. You can't describe it in 3D English, in physical matter, because it's beyond physical. But it's very, very exciting. It's so exciting what you see. So yeah, let's talk about going beyond how we would see this as a big veil, the end of the
Yeah.
goldfish bowl being a big veil, Rob. And again, I was told by my guides, don't think of the veil as being this separate thing. I've got to move beyond the veil. The veil is you, so you have that choice to not look, to not peek, beyond or above that veil, or you have the choice to go, do you know what? I want to see beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rob, about that?
Well, this is where we are talking about consciousness, because
Yeah.
that is
Mm.
beyond the veil. We have a degree
Mm.
of consciousness as beings that
Mm.
allows us to live our lives on this planet. The basic things and thought processes that allow us to exist and do jobs and bring up families and all that stuff. But most of us, in my experience, want to know more.
Yeah.
What
Mm.
else is there? How do I find out more about the purpose? Am I here just to go to work and to take the kids to school, to watch them grow up and have grandchildren? Is that it? And I think for most people, they would say, no, there isn't. There's more. So people will go to all sorts of religions, perhaps, to
Hmm.
find answers to the bigger picture, whereas the bigger picture is in fact inside you already. So I'm going to abuse that poor goldfish again. Before that goldfish ended up in your bowl, Julie, it was in a tank with other goldfish, swimming happily and probably with a collective consciousness
Yes.
in
Yes, there's
that
other,
little
yeah.
goldfish hive that was going on. Then someone scooped it out in a net and plopped it in a plastic bag. You brought it home in the back of the
Hmm.
car and then you dropped it into a bowl.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that goldfish then went, oh, this must be all it is then, and swam round and round until it ceased to be.
Accepted that,
Yeah,
accepted it, yeah, to
absolutely.
be. Mm.
But it came from a higher knowledge. It came from a
Mm.
collective, was torn at its moment of birth into your goldfish
Mm.
as a scarcely thinking being that couldn't see or remember that collective. And because it was a goldfish, perhaps it didn't have the ability to think beyond that. But we do.
Yes.
You know, we are not goldfish. We're human beings. We're an extraordinarily developed, amazing piece of technology. This thing we call our body is technology.
Yes, it is,
And
isn't it?
it's
Yes.
wired up
Mm.
with all sorts of things. It's got DNA that's strands and strands of it, full of knowledge and
Yeah, instructions actually. Yeah,
instructions and
instructions for
things that,
life if
yeah,
you listen. Yeah.
absolutely. And we, as beings increasing our sentience and our knowledge and our consciousness, activate more and more in that DNA.
Mm.
And
Yes.
as we
Yes.
activate more and more, we know more and more. And just before we did this, I had an sort of analogy of an electrical circuit. And I was shown this by the guides as we were working. So there is my electric box, whatever you call it, electric meter, and the override switch is up. So the electricity is flowing, but then how many switches are up?
Mm.
So have I turned circuits off? So are the downstairs plugs on or off? Are the upstairs lights on or off? That kind of analogy. If you follow that through into your thinking, you have the ability to flick all your switches up and to make everything work. Or you have the ability to leave some of those switches down and go, I don't want to go there. It's too hard. It's
Mm.
too difficult. It's not for me to know that. Of course, it's for you to know that. That's why the
Mm.
override switch is already up.
Mm.
You can have all this knowledge, but you have to do the work to put the switch up,
Mm.
which is
It's
what you and I do.
choice. It
It's
sounds very
choice.
much like your choice, your decisions.
Absolutely, it's your choice. You know, you can play the game of life or you can not.
Mm. Mm.
You can advance your pawn to the center of the game, or you can just stay at the back where it's
Mm.
safer and comfier.
Yeah, very safe.
Entirely your choice.
Mm.
The proviso is that if you advance your pawn to the center, it might be taken.
Mm.
So that's the risk you take,
That's the
and life
risk.
is full of
Mm.
risks.
Mm.
So if you want to be a conscious, awake human being, you've got to push your pawn forward, and you've got to think about how do I play this game? What is right for me, and what is right for you, and how do we play this together?
Mm.
And hopefully you'll make it to the other side of the board.
Yeah. And if you're still asking why would I want to go
Yeah,
beyond consciousness? Why would I
yeah.
want to see beyond the veil? And there are many reasons, but the essential reason for now is that to help you increase that frequency of consciousness in order to know that you do not have to live in a life of scarcity, lack of, victimhood. That's the trouble with the
Mm,
goldfish bowl. That's the trouble with us going into this false karma of going round this wheel constantly, of thinking that's all there is. And that it's as simple as that. It isn't all there is. And you go beyond the veil, you raise your consciousness, which is what, if you're thinking as well, if you're somebody who knows that you need to help humanity in some way, whether it's, your family, your own family, whether it's with clients, one of the essential things, or the main essential thing, is to help others go beyond the veil, raise their frequency, do the inner work to raise the frequency, to see so much or feel or sense so much beyond things actually think, where we feel things are, this is the reality. You can soon change your reality when you go into the higher consciousness and understand this reality of the goldfish bowl that we're in at the moment. And that's really why, essentially why. So you can change your life and you can change others to not have this struggle, this struggle bus anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much untapped potential out there.
Yeah.
And to go back to my analogy of flicking those switches up, the more you flick those switches up, the more you know and the more you want to know.
Yes. Yes.
Because just the enormity of knowledge available to us is beyond our comprehension.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but
So much more. You never stop learning,
no,
never stop finding more out. And
no,
the guy, and I would talk about guides. We'll talk about what we mean by guides in another
yeah,
episode. But our guides will just drip feed. One of the things they've always done is drip feed, so we don't get too much and get too blown away with our small human minds. When we
indeed.
say small, that is in comparison to what is beyond the earth, beyond human, beyond the human part of our consciousness.
Absolutely. So I would just say to everybody, just think of the fuse box in your home, because we've all
Mm,
got one,
mm.
and just
Yeah.
think about those switches and what it means to have your house fully powered,
Yes. Fantastic
where you
analogy.
can turn every switch on and it works.
Mm, mm,
And then imagine living with half those switches on and knowing that you can't plug something in downstairs because it won't work. And think about
mm,
how that would make you feel as a 3D human. And just apply that to your spiritual growth and your desire for consciousness, how much more there is. And I'm not going to put a limit on the switches on that box. I was working with 9 when we'd worked this morning,
mm,
9
mm,
switches. Um, there's no limit to those switches, but you need to turn one on first and then another one and then another one. And in it floods this
mm,
consciousness, this knowledge.
mm,
And it is just astonishing what you see and what you find you knew. What you
mm,
remember is perhaps the better word, not what you see,
mm.
because it's all
Yeah.
there. It's
It's
all
already
stored up in
done.
you. You have
Yeah.
this.
Mm,
Yeah, you were born equipped to reconnect, and
yes.
the game of life is about reconnecting to your truth.
Yeah, the disconnection is just what we think and we believe and what people have
Yeah,
told you. You're disconnecting because you've chosen to disconnect. So very easy once you understand that belief, very easy to then go, gee, I want to do all this work to connect and have all these fantastic things.
yeah,
A good analogy you had, Rob, of if you're only working on so many switches on the fuse box
yeah,
and you said everything's in darkness, everything can be dark and light. We're not just saying just only work with the
yeah,
light, but what's happening is people are working in the darkness, but not shining the light to be able to see what's in the darkness. So they're continuing being victims and being, working as a victimhood, mindset. And working in the dark, continuing in that loop of being dark, instead of being able to balance out and integrate the dark. It's not about just getting rid of it. It's understanding the dark and going, from a higher state of consciousness, going, do you mean to say I no longer need to do that and work in this
yeah,
darkness, this, whatever you're dealing with at the moment, and I can just override it and I can integrate it, till it all balances out. That's a great analogy, Rob. And
yeah,
that's another reason why we're doing it. Why we're looking
absolutely.
at greater
And
consciousness.
using the analogy again, if you can connect to that darkness and understand that there is darkness in your life
Yeah.
until you switch on your
Yeah.
consciousness to put the light into that darkness, if you're at least aware of it, you can learn who is using the darkness to manipulate you.
Hmm.
And this gets quite heavy,
So
and
true.
and it's possibly a whole other area of discussion.
Yep.
But the world is manipulated by a very small group of people
Mm,
who understand how to build and work on your fears.
that's right.
So they
Mm,
know how to work the darker matrix.
mm,
And you need to switch your lights on so
yep.
that you can see through that.
Oh, brilliant. Mm.
And I think that's probably
Yeah, that's as
enough
much as
for
we
us
need to
today,
say
don't
for
you think,
this week.
Julie?
That'll give you enough
Yeah,
food for thought this week.
yeah,
So next week we will be talking a bit more in depth, it might be DNA, might be the darkness, might be connecting with guides. We're going to do
Yeah.
all of that as we
All
go
of the
along.
above. Yeah.
All of the
Yeah.
above, all the things we're excited about,
Yeah.
as you can see. So, yeah, have a digest what we've said.
Yeah.
If you need to, put any comments on or email us to ask us more questions, please do so, and we'll explain things, anything else that you want to know about from this. So, on that note, bye for now.
Bye all.